So we have this balancing chemical equations sheet. Let's do some practice ones. We'll start with the first one. So we have peroxide over here, and that goes through a chemical reaction and turns into water and oxygen, an oxygen molecule. Now remember, the subscripts down here, that tells you how many of the element before it. So this one has 2 hydrogens and also 2 oxygens. However, water has 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen. When we're balancing chemical equation, we want to put what's called coefficients in front of them. You've probably heard of them in math. Coefficients will go in front of the compound to tell you how many of everything there is. It tells you how many of those compounds, how many of those molecules exist in this reaction. Right now we don't have any showing, so we're going to balance it all out. Because conservation of matter, we cannot create new elements or new atoms. They're there before the reaction starts, and they have to be there afterwards. So what we do is we make a little chart. We have hydrogen in this reaction and oxygen. So on each side of the arrow, I'm going to write hydrogen and oxygen. So for now, if I look at my coefficients, I have 2 hydrogens and 2 oxygens. So I'm going to write 2 and 2. The other side, my products, I have 2 hydrogens. So I'm going to write a 2. And oxygens, I have 1 here, and I have 2 here. So in case you're bad at math, 2 plus 1 is 3. Okay, so this equation is not balanced. My hydrogens are balanced, so that's happy, but my oxygens are not. So what I need to do is I need to add coefficients before certain compounds to balance this out. Since I have fewer oxygens on this side, I'm going to start on this side. So the numbers have to go in front of the compound. So I'm just going to pick 2. Okay? Now, the coefficient tells you how many of this whole compound there are. So there are 2 H2O2 molecules in each reaction, if this is correct. So that tells me that I multiply the coefficient by the subscript. Okay? So 2 times 2, I now have 4 hydrogens. Then I do 2 times 2 for the oxygens. Oops. And I now have 4 oxygens. So now the whole thing's completely out of whack. So I need to figure out how am I going to balance my product side. Then I need to figure out how I'm going to balance my product side. So what I'm going to do is, since my hydrogens are so much lower, and I only have hydrogen in this compound, I'm going to start there. Let me try putting a 2 there. So now, again, I multiply my coefficient by the subscript. So I now have 2 times 2, so now I have 4 hydrogens. And I also do 2 times 1, because remember, if there's nothing there, that means that we know there's just one of it. So 2 times 1 is 2. Hopefully that math wasn't too hard. So now I have 2 oxygens here and 2 oxygens here, so a total of 4 oxygens. So I have 4 hydrogens, 4 hydrogens, 4 oxygens, 4 oxygens. The equation is balanced. Let's do another example. Here we have HCl plus CaOH2 makes CaCl2 and H2O. So you can see they've kind of switched partners, if you will. So same thing as before, it's just a little more complicated. The elements I have are hydrogen, this is an L, so chlorine, calcium, and oxygen, right? That looks like it. So I'm going to do the same thing, HCaCl. Oh, okay. So I have one hydrogen here, and here I have a hydrogen, but it's in parentheses. Now remember, if you have a subscript outside of parentheses, that means that there are two of everything that is within them. So there are two OH molecules, which means two oxygens and two hydrogens right there. So I have two hydrogens here, plus the one over here. So 2 plus 1, that makes 3. Piece of shoot. So that makes 3. Cl, there's only one of them. Make the one kind of like that for funsies. Calcium, that's only one. Oxygen, again, it's inside the parentheses and there's a 2. So there are 2 oxygens. Okay. Other side of the equation, I have H2O, so 2 H's. And I have chlorine right here, and then a 2 chlorines. Calcium, I only have 1. And oxygen only appears in this one spot. So it's just 1. Okay, let's see what's balanced in this and what is not. So you can see my calcium is balanced, but nothing else is. My hydrogens are not balanced, my chlorines are not balanced, my oxygens are not balanced. It's a big old mess. So I want to balance out everything else that's not balanced. So hydrogen is always a fun place to start. Usually water helps. Okay, so I'm looking at my equation and saying, well, I have fewer hydrogens on this side than this side, so I'll start over here on my product side. So what I want to do is I want to add a coefficient to the front. So let's just try 2 because it's a nice pretty number. Now what does that do to my equation? Well, now my hydrogens have changed. I have 2H2, 2 times 2 is 4. Hard math, I know. Now I have 2 oxygens, that has no subscript, so we know there's just 1. So now my oxygen, now my oxygen is 2. All right, let me take a look here. Now my oxygens are balanced. My calciums are still balanced. My chlorine and my hydrogen are still not balanced. So let's see what I can do there. Okay, so let's go on to our reactant side. Let's see what I can do here. So let's try a 2 in front of my HCl. So now I have 2. Now I have 2 H's here, plus my 2 H's here. So now I have 4 hydrogens. Okay, see now my hydrogens are balanced. Happy day. Now my chlorines are a little different though too. So now that I've put a 2 here, I now have 2 chlorines. Piece of So now I have, let's check this out. I have 2 chlorines, that's balanced. 2 oxygens, that's balanced. 1 calcium, that's balanced. 4 hydrogens, that's balanced. The whole thing is balanced. We have the same number of hydrogens, calciums, chlorines, and oxygens on each side of the arrow. So the reaction is the reaction is balanced.